Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? Bonnie, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Lovely. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kelsey Doom. I'm the president and CEO at the Brookings Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming to our City Council Candidate Forum. It's great to be able to get to know candidates. It's great not to be seeing them over Zoom, to have these in person this year. So it was a lot of fun trying to get it all done last year, but I'm just glad we can be in person now. So thanks again for coming. I want to give a big shout out to our Public Affairs Committee. We have a couple, Greg Fargen and Leanne Pierce are both on our Public Affairs Committee. They help make this all happen, and so we couldn't do it without them. We have our moderators, Angie Boersma. She's the owner of ID8 Architecture and a county commissioner. And then we have Andy Foberg. She is the president and CEO at the SDSU Alumni Association, and also a past chair of our board of directors. So thank you both so much for being here. We have a different format this year, simply because we have so many candidates, which is a great problem to have. It's really awesome to see people stepping up into these roles. And so we are going to have 3 mini forums this year. What's going to happen is we'll have our 3-year candidates here, and Bonnie is on the phone. We will go through and ask them 3 questions. They'll do opening remarks, 3 questions, closing remarks, and then we'll transition to our 2-year candidates. So they're all sequestered over there, so it's not unfair advantage for anybody to hear the questions or others' responses. So then the 2-year candidates will come out. We'll do opening remarks, 3 questions, closing remarks, and then go to the 1-year candidates. After those 3 forums, we'll bring everyone out up front and we'll get questions from the public. So as much time as we have, we will ask as many questions as we can, and all candidates will answer all of those questions. The reason we're doing it this year is we got some feedback that it's tough to get to know candidates if once you ask a question and get everybody's response, by candidate 3, the answers are a little bit the same. You hear, yep, I agree with so-and-so. And we have a lot of first-year candidates running this year, and so we don't want them to feel pressure to try and say something different or new. We really want to hear what they think. And so we wanted to take that element out and allow it to be just fair for all and give everybody a chance to speak their platform. So without further ado, did I miss anything there? There are public questions over there, slips for public questions. If you have a question, just put it in the air and one of our volunteers will come and grab it. Looks like we got one right here, Leanne. Thank you so much. And that way it'll give Andy and Angie a chance to organize those, make sure we don't have any repetitions, and we'll answer as many as we can. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Angie Boersma.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our 3-year candidates, Leah Brink, Holly Tilton-Byrne, and Bonnie Specker via phone. So we're going to start this morning with their opening comments. You have 2 minutes. Kelsey has the timer for you, so be aware I will cut you off. Okay, so we'll start with Councilwoman Leah Brink.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event this year and every other year, and to the members of the Public Affairs Committee for helping organize us today. I'm Leah Brink, and I'm running for a 2nd term on the City Council because I love Brookings, and I want to continue to serve this community that I now call home. As an incumbent candidate, I already understand the role, the relationships, and the personnel involved in local government. And therefore, I'm making an informed decision about choosing to run again for this position. It does take some time to get up to speed on issues and protocol, and so an incumbent candidate has a small advantage being able to be effective from day one. I first ran for council in 2019 after spending a decade volunteering on various city boards and commissions. This was excellent training, prepared me well for the role. I do believe that the political decisions made at the local level in our communities are the ones most likely to impact our day-to-day lives. And if I think about the qualities I want to see out of leaders, those include intelligence and an analytical ability to absorb data and make decisions on that data, excellent communications, transparency in your decision-making, and enough courage to admit when you're wrong. These are the qualities that I try to bring to the table each time I come to this room and occupy one of these seats. The role of a city councilor is to be the policy arm of the city, while city staff, under the direction of our city manager, implement policies. But since Brookings is not a brand new city, we aren't really lacking in policies and ordinances. In fact, we do have many that could be cleaned up, modified, or eliminated entirely. So instead, I like to think of this more as a role of stewardship. And we need to be leaders who are going to be good stewards of the public resources. I promise to be a good steward and to keep us thinking about the core competencies of local government.
Thanks, Leah. Moving on, opening remarks from Holly Tilton Byrne.
Good morning, everyone. I want to first thank the Chamber and the Public Affairs Committee with the Chamber for putting this on today. I also want to thank the attendees in the room, the other candidates that we'll be hearing from today, and also our moderators. And of course, I want to thank Cool Beans Coffee for providing the coffee, because I don't know that I would survive this morning without it. And maybe you guys are in that same boat today, too. I have served for the Brookings City Council for the last 5 years, and it's truly been an honor. I really am thankful that the community has entrusted me with this position. And as we all know, the last several years have been a little more challenging than others. But even given that challenge, it's been a phenomenal opportunity to hear from the community members, take everyone's voice into consideration when making the decisions that we make, and really helping to shape the future of Brookings. A little bit about myself. I am a fourth-generation Brookings County resident, very proud of that. And I'm currently raising my family here in Brookings. My husband, Tim, and I have 3 children. We have a 6-year-old, a almost 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old, so we stay very busy. I also am a BHS grad and an SDSU grad. I always tell folks I graduated grade school, middle school, high school, and college all in the same community, and I'm also very proud of that. I am a nonprofit industry professional. I have worked in the nonprofit industry since graduating from SDSU. I currently work in an HR position for a local nonprofit. And I have had a long history in serving the city of Brookings. I was the chair of the Sustainability Council before being on the city council. I am on the Domestic Abuse Shelter Board, and I serve on the Downtown Business District Committee with the Chamber. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about me, my website is www.hollyforbrookings.com, and you can learn a little bit more about why I'm choosing to run again. But again, I just want to thank you all for being here today and being willing to learn about the candidates as you go to the polls on April 12th.
Thank you, Holly. Finally, Bonnie Specker.
Yes, I'd like to thank the Chamber as well. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I had made a previous commitment to help our son and his wife with their firstborn child for the first week or two. I have lived in Brookings for the past 25 years. We raised 4 of our children there, and we really like Brookings. And I retired in 2021 from SDSU, where I was a director and endowed professor of the E.A. Martin program. I've done quite a bit of community volunteer service. I was on the Brookings as well as the corporate Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors, their finance committee, their strategic growth and building committee. And I thought when I retired I could give back to the city and by serving on city council. The campaign slogan that we have is Heart, Smart, and Grit. And I think that describes my opinion or feeling towards this position. I think it's important for people to respect other people's opinions and their health, and that people should be responsible for their neighbors, and that all members should be valued. That's the hard part. The smart part is that I think I can contribute a lifetime of data analysis and interpretation. I think that's important for the city council to look at legitimate data sources when making their decisions. And the grit, I really do believe that it's important if you make a decision to do something that you go sort of head first or gung-ho and get the job done that you've set out to do. And I think
Bonnie, that's time.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. We're going to move into the question and answer period of this first mini forum. And our first question we'll pose actually to Bonnie first, I think. The American Rescue Plan Act funds are a major topic of discussion right now as for the city as we strive to strategically invest several $1 million of federal funding. Talk to us about what your constituents are asking for or needing with ARPA funds. 1 minute for this response. Bonnie, we'll have you go first.
Okay. The Brookings City Council has distributed a survey to the community asking what they feel is important to use these funds for. And I think it will be important for the council to look at those data and see how that funds are best distributed equitably across the different sectors within the city of Brookings. And I look forward to seeing the results of that survey. I do think that a lot of people were adversely affected by the pandemic, not just people, but businesses and government, and it will be important to make sure these funds are distributed. That's all.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next, we'll move to Holly Tilton-Burn, and I'm happy to reread the question if that's helpful. Okay, Holly, go ahead.
As Bonnie already stated, the city has put out a survey asking the people what we want to have that money spent on. And so I think that will definitely help to guide our decision-making process and how we use those dollars. I'm excited to see what those results are and what the people would like to see in terms of use of a pretty sizable amount of dollars that we'll be getting. A couple of things that rise to the top of my mind that I think could be potential use for the dollars would be funding some of the mental health initiatives that we have here in town. It's been an ongoing issue that we want to make sure that we address even prior to the pandemic, but we've definitely seen a greater need for that since the pandemic has taken place. I also think that we may have the opportunity to be creative and use some of those dollars to help fund a redesign or refresh on our public our police department. That's something that we've been looking at for some time, and I hope that we're able to utilize some of those funds for that.
Thanks, Holly. Time. Finally, Leah Brink.
The survey that we put out into the community, I hope many of you in the audience took that survey and provided your feedback and your thoughts. And I think it's going to be very important for the city council to balance the desires of the community with other needs that we recognize. And certainly police facility is a good example of one of those needs. I would also add the fire department training facility that they need some revamped funds for. My opinion on this is that we need to be strategic with that money, and we should look to fund some one-time projects that may not otherwise be able to be funded, and maybe that wouldn't have ongoing sustaining operational costs that the city would have to absorb and maintain over time. So I think it'll be important to think through our city council priority projects list and balance that with our 10-year capital improvement plan, and then the results of the survey to marry those concepts together and then come up with some great ideas to help us continue to make progress in Brookings.
Thank you. Moving on to the second question. We'll start with Holly first on this one. You did a nice segue right into that, actually. Mental health is an ever-increasing issue in Brookings. A good example of one collaborative effort to prioritize mental health in our community is that the Brookings Police Department utilizes our community mental health center as a crisis response resource to help improve outcomes in crisis calls. Talk about how you'd support and advocate for mental health and collaborative efforts between the city and mental health providers.
So I think this is a really great question, and one of the things that we have recently done as we've gone through our budget process is we did make sure there was funding incorporated into our budget process for the mental health initiatives that we have here in our community. I think the example that was just stated, where the police department is partnering with some of those resources, is absolutely critical because so many of the responses that our police department sees on a day-to-day basis include mental health crises. And so just making sure that our city officials and staff are well educated in how to respond to those things, I think is going to be critical. And then really just having the city be a place where we can support and partner with those already existing resources. We do have the Brookings Behavioral Health and Wellness Center and Avera Behavioral Health here in Brookings, and so we're very fortunate to have those resources right here in town. And we also have a great resource that is put out by Helpline Center, where it lists all of the available mental health resources. So that is something I hope that folks go out, look up online and use.
Thank you. Leah Brink.
We all know and we hear a lot that mental health is a concern in our communities and across the nation. And I do think it's important that this city continues to invest in ways, collaborative ways for organizations to partner together and join forces, just like the example raised with the police department responding to the crisis calls along with mental health. That is truly important, but I also think we need to examine more the root causes of some of the mental health problems that we have, because if we're just treating kind of at the end of the line, it seems to me that it's we're going to continue to be in this problem, and it's going to require more and more funding and more resources over time. So I'd like to also see us expand our conversation into what are the ways that we can help build connections in children of all ages and people of all ages and demographics and economic backgrounds in order to help people have that sense of connection and enjoy the community and fellowship within it that we all do. And so I think that'll be something that we should look at as well.
Thank you. Finally, Bonnie Specker.
Yes, I think the mental health issue is important to our family for sure, for personal reasons. And I think the steps that the police department have taken with collaborating with East Central is an excellent first step. The only concern I have about that is I think that a lot of the calls may be mental health based, and the police may not be aware of that. So I do think that some sort of training on the part of the police force in mental health de-escalation events is critical, and I would like to see that discussed more by the city. But I agree with the other comments made by both of the candidates, and we could look at the root causes of this issue as well. So.
Thank you, Bonnie. The final question to Leah Brink first. What are some ideas or potential policy adjustments the city could explore to improve the affordability of housing, and how would you champion those efforts?
Boy, this is a problem that's never going away, isn't it? We hear about affordable housing all of the time, and it's a question that has some subjectivity because affordable means different things to different people. We have kind of a shortage in the market of some types of housing in this community, and I think that that's apparent to a lot of people that have tried to look for homes recently. There's not a lot of inventory out there. Now, one of the reasons why housing goes up and why affordable housing in general is complicated is because there are a lot of regulations and rules and restrictions and structures that are required to for our development community to go through in order to create new projects. And so when there are more and more of those things, naturally the costs do go up. And so I think one thing that we can do is we can try to keep our development as lean as possible and allow those folks the flexibility to really come in with different market solutions.
Time. Bonnie Specker.
I think affordable housing in the mid-market level is rare. I mean, that's what the surveys have shown. I'm not so sure it's a result of the regulations as much as it is a limitation of the land that's available for development. And I think this will become more of an issue with the new interstate exchange and commercial development that will result from that. I think the steps the city has taken toward changing zoning regulations should help, and an increase in housing density is really, I think, the ultimate answer to the affordable housing issue.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll close it out for this mini forum with a 90-second closing. Oh, sorry, Holly. My apologies. Thank you. I shouldn't be in charge of this, apparently.
Okay. So I think one of the things that we as the city are awaiting is the housing study. So that is something that we did recently kick off that is supposed to be ready for us to review in May. And so I think that will help guide a lot of those decisions. We have recently done some innovative made innovative zoning decisions, including the R1D district that is newer, and that will allow for kind of a return to some old methods, and that includes like alley access, smaller setbacks, things like that, which will definitely allow for more dense housing and hopefully lead to some more affordable housing. We've also done things like usage of TIF districts, and then we started what's called the DRT meetings, which I think is helping to have some innovative ideas between the developers and the city and kind of coming up with ways that we can make housing more affordable. So I plan to continue to support those items.
Thank you, Holly. We'll do closing remarks, 90 seconds apiece, and we'll start with Bonnie Specker.
Okay, I think my main goal as a city council member is to listen to constituents and to know what's important to them and to use my smarts to review and fully understand the data and to ask questions when I don't understand it, and to show up and to use my grit to get the job done. There's more information people can find out about my background and specific topics on bonnieforbrookings.com, and I look forward to listening to constituents and getting the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Holly Tilton-Byrne.
So for the last 5 years, I have really been given the honor of a lifetime to serve the community of Brookings. Brookings is my hometown, and it's a place that I feel a lot of passion about. My roots are deep here and will continue to grow very deep here. And so to be given the opportunity to serve all of you really is the honor of a lifetime. And I hope to be able to continue serving in this seat for the next 3 years. I really look at the last several years that we have been through, and I see nothing but resilience in this community. I think that we have been very fortunate to have leadership of others in this community, both within the city and with other institutions here in Brookings. And it's been an honor to be able to partner with those institutions and help move this community forward through difficult times. I hope that on April 12th, I have all of your support. Early voting starts March 28th right here in the City County building. I hope as many people as possible take advantage of that. It does kind of speed up the voting process for you. And if you would like to learn more information about me, please again visit my website, hollyforbrookings.com, or my Facebook page. You can find that by searching Holly for Brookings. Thank you all for again being here today and for taking the time to learn about the candidates and being educated as you go to the polls. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Leah.
In my opening remarks, I mentioned the core competencies of local government. I would define those as infrastructure, our roads and our public spaces, our civic services, things like permits and trash collection, very important item, and public safety, our police and fire departments. We should focus our efforts on maintaining our public spaces with excellence. We should invest conservatively and save aggressively. And we should ensure that those who keep us safe have the tools and resources they need to perform those roles. I would like to thank my friends, family, and mentors for your feedback and encouragement, especially my boyfriend, Josh, and my children, Maddie and David. Shout out to Maddie, who's here. Thank you for coming. I offer my encouragement to anyone out there listening to this who thinks that they might want to occupy one of these seats someday. You can do it. You absolutely can. If you want to find out more about my campaign, I have a Facebook page, Leah Brink, for Brookings City Council, and you can reach out to me there. There are just so many wonderful plans and ideas that we have collectively for the future of Brookings, and I'm so excited to be part of the team that gets to make those things happen. This is a wonderful community that welcomes others with open arms, open hearts, and open minds, and it's truly a pleasure to represent the city of Brookings. No matter who you vote for, I definitely encourage everyone to get out and vote on April 12th. And thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you. That concludes part one.
All right, we'll do a 2-minute transition and we'll start with year 2. Okay. If our lovely you guys need more coffee, you good to go up there? Good. All right. Okay, we will get going with our second forum this morning. We have our 2-year candidates. If we could have quiet in the audience. Thank you very much.
You guys to keep it down over there.
Angie, I'll let you take it away.
We'll move on to our 2-year candidates for the seat vacated this year. So we have Wayne Avery and Jeremiah Nelson. We'll start with opening comments. Wayne, we'll let you go first.
Well, thank you, Angie, for helping today, and I look forward. I'm really excited to see this many people in the room, so that's great. Everybody is real interested in this, in the city council race, and I just want you to know that it's a very important thing for me. I've enjoyed the work that I've done there, and I can see how important it is to the community. I want to start out by just going over just a few things that I think are important in my history. I've lived here for 43 years. I'd say it was the better part of 50 because I went to school here and started in 1972 at SDSU, moved away for 7 years, and so it's still the better part of the 50. So, my wife and I have always been active in community affairs. We've been in so many different things over the years. I've been worked a lot with the Advance Foundation, Pheasants Forever, United Way, just a number of organizations, and I felt that I always made an impact in those organizations, and they were better for me being a part of those things. And I found that my life has pretty much been involved with service. Service to the community, service to customers, and government service. And I found a lot of parallels between what I did in banking and what I've done with the city council. In both, you had to work with people, you gathered information, you analyzed that information, and you made decisions based on that. And you made it for the benefit of all. You had to work with policies, procedures, and in a strict format, and realize that what you wanted to do was not always what was going to happen.
Time.
That you had to convince other people. And
That's time.
okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
Jeremiah.
Good morning. Like Wayne said, it's great seeing everyone out here today. I wasn't expecting such a great turnout, so good for everybody for taking time out of your Saturday morning. My name is Jeremiah Nelson. Little quick history. I was born and raised in Brookings, graduated from Brookings High School, graduated from SDSU. My family has been in the business community in Brookings my entire life. We recently sold the bowling alley in 2019. My grandfather, many of you may have known him, Jerry Busick, moved here in the late 70s and ran Hy-Vee, where he retired and became a very avid SDSU supporter. And then my dad's family's from Volga, and they've lived in Brookings County for over 120 years. We homesteaded out there. So a little bit about me. I'm a proud Republican. I believe in fiscal conservative and limited government. And really, I mean, that's how I want to approach this position with everything I do, is just asking the question, should the government be involved? And if so, at how much? I would like to see us start curbing some of the spending habits that we have and taking that money and putting it towards things that are better for everybody in the community. And really, it's about all I really have to tell you about myself. And I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you. We'll start with the first question, and that will go to Jeremiah to start with. The first question is, the American Rescue Plan Act funds are a major topic of discussion right now for the city as we strive to strategically invest several $1 million of federal funding. Talk to us about what your constituents are asking for or needing with the ARPA funds.
So one of the big things that the people I've been talking with want to see is the police department is in desperate need of some upgrades and repairs. We have mold growing in the front entryway. Honestly, for a city like us that I'm so proud of, I find that a little shameful on our end, and we need to be working on that. As far as the ARPA funds or the federal relief money, I have my concerns about accepting that money right now without knowing whether or not what strings are attached to it. I strongly believe that if the money is truly relief money, it should not come with any strings attached. So I would be hesitant to grab that money and use it until I knew we weren't tied into something 5-10 years down the road from me.
Thank you. Wayne?
No, the city is going to be receiving approximately $4.3 million in those funds. We've already received about half of that. And they should be used wisely. And but also we need to use them for the real needs that were there. I mean, there is some to replace some lost revenue, to do things that that are related to the pandemic, to cover some of those expenses, those extra expenses, and to do things like with those one-time funds that will benefit the city in the long run. One of the questions that we had is in the city council, we said that we wanted more money to go to mental health issues, and there was going to be cut. And we said we're going to put some money back in there. We're going to use the ARPA funds if we need to. We will use reserves if we have to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. That leads well into our second question, and Wayne, we'll have you go first on this one. Mental health is certainly an ever-increasing issue. A good example of one collaborative effort to prioritize mental health in our community is that the Brookings Police Department utilizes our Community Mental Health Center as a crisis response resource to help improve outcomes for crisis calls. Talk about how you'd support and advocate for mental health and collaborative efforts between the city and mental health providers. We'll start with Wayne.
Well, I think I just said that, but I got ahead of myself. But that was one of the things that we did talk about. Is there was some the city has some funds that we use for outside agencies, and that came to us, and there was going to be a fairly substantial cut in what they asked for, and we said no, that's just not acceptable. That we want to support our mental health agencies, and in a time like this where we've gone through such a crisis in our community and our country with people losing family members and losing jobs and have just this constant burden on everyone, that I think that's just more and more important that we take care of our people and their mental health needs.
Thank you. Jeremiah.
You know, actually, I strongly agree with what Wayne had to say there. It's been a real tough time for everybody. I mean, we all suffered, some far more than others. The biggest thing that I'd like to see is right now I think we're putting a lot of stress or onus on the police department to be the front line of all of this. And realistically, that I don't know that that's fair to them in the current state that it is. I would like to see some more training. I'd like to see some more outreach just from our city in general to help them out with that, with the problems going on right now.
Thank you. Question 3 is related to affordable housing. And on this one, we'll start with Jeremiah. What are some ideas or potential policy adjustments the city could explore to improve the affordability of housing, and how would you champion those efforts?
So the affordable housing has always been a kind of a touchy subject on both ends. I personally don't believe the city should be taking any money to subsidize affordable housing. I think that's a losing battle in the long run. What I would like to see us do is instead get our spending under control, find a way to get our cost of living down. And I think in the long run, that will bring about more affordable housing.
Thank you. Wayne.
Well, I think we've taken steps to do that. One of the recent things we did at the city council level, and it was recommendation of the planning commission, was that we allow a smaller lot for a building, which can bring down the cost. What we've done in the past too is the tax increment financing, where we help pay for some of the infrastructure costs and take that off, of the developers and let that money be repaid over time through taxes. So there's several things we can do. There's a lot of the builders are stepping up, and they're building homes as fast as they can build them. And as those homes are occupied, some other homes are opened up. So it's just a process, and we can make incremental progress. It'll take everybody to be involved.
Thank you. We'll move on to closing comments, and each of you have 90 seconds for those closing comments. We'll start with Jeremiah.
well, it probably won't take 90 seconds, but I just want to reiterate that, again, I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in limited government and reducing our overall spending habits. And realistically, everything I approach is going to be with that mindset. So if that resonates with you, I really hope you vote for me. And if you have any other questions after this, please feel free to stop and talk to me. I genuinely want input from the people of Brookings, because without you guys telling us what you want, we don't know what to do with it. So with that, Wayne?
Wayne.
I have a genuine interest in city government and a desire to be part of the future of Brookings. I have a strong background in finance, economic development, and gained in my banking career that spanned 45 years. I've held leadership positions in numerous community organizations at the local, state, and national levels, gaining valuable experience. I've served on the City Planning Commission, and through the City Council, I am currently an ex officio member of the Brookings Utilities. I have a background, proven leadership skills, and willingness to continue as an effective member of the council, whether it be serving my previous clients, serving my community through community service organizations, or now as a city councilor. I hope I serve with fairness, kindness, and thoughtfulness. To quote Babe Ruth, it's hard to beat someone who never gives up, and I don't give up.
Thank you both. We'll take a quick little 2-minute switch and take our 1-year candidates next. There's still more, guys. There's still more.
a city-county joint task force, and they look at the gaps and the resources and the different issues in town surrounding mental health and how we can implement those strong, sustainable strategies in town. One of the partnerships with the police department is absolutely crucial, and there's also a Vera Behavioral Health and the Brookings Behavioral Health with the county and other first responders. What we can do as a city is we can be at those tables and have those conversations. We can fund external programs, such as what we do with our nonprofits in town, and then we can support policies that come forward from those collaborations that we have.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, mental health is definitely a topic. I mean, we talk a lot about this on campus too, and you can't hire enough counselors right now at SDSU for the amount of mental health problems that students are facing. And I know that applies more broadly to the community as well. So I think one of the biggest things, I guess, from my perspective, is just sharing the resources that Brookings already has to offer for mental health. I think that, you know, if I was someone looking for help right now, I might not even know where to go. And so I think making sure that we have a very firm plan of here's who you contact and here's where you can get directed to, I think that would be a big step in going toward and working towards mental health challenges. And I also think that, you know, the way the question was phrased was almost perfect, because we got to give the resources to the people that are experts in this area. Like the city can't be the foremost authority on mental health, and so just allowing the people who are experts in that area to do the work, I think, is the best way to go.
Thank you. The final question we'll pose to Andrew first. What are some potential policy adjustments the city could explore to improve the affordability of housing, and how would you champion those efforts?
Yeah, so the issue of housing is also one that I kind of take a look at from a different perspective. I mean, I've been living in college rentals for the past couple of years now, and ideally like to call Brookings home and find a house that I can live in long term here in town. And I think when we're looking at the conversation, it's not just a city issue. It's a city issue, it's a county issue. We have to bring the utilities into it and the developers into it. So really facilitating those conversations with all the different stakeholders that we have to make strategic decisions for housing, because, you know, it's a big conversation of there's not a lot of land left here in Brookings. So making sure that we're using that land the wisest to have the biggest impact on housing that we can. So whether that be smaller lot sizes or more multi-use facilities, I think both of those are great routes to go.
Thank you. Brianna.
So housing is another one of those complex issues where you can't just look at it by itself. You have to look again at the workforce and the mental health. And I keep repeating that because we need to look at these problems not as individual problems and silo them out, but a community conversation, because that's how we inch away at these problems that we've been talking about for years. With housing and policy specifically, the City Council has already made some steps. One of them is zoning, of going back to smaller zoning, and that allows for higher density housing and still keeping up with amenities that they need. When we talk about affordable housing, it's accessible housing. So there's multiple price points, multiple amenities and needs for different families, from student housing to workforce housing to seniors and everyone in between. We can be at the conversation of those community housing. I know that there's been one in the past about affordable housing task force, and there's going to be a housing study that's being conducted in the city right now. That's another survey that's going to have recommendations that are coming to council in the next few months, and the city council is going to have to strategically plan the land from that. Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Closing remarks. We will start with Andrew. You have 90 seconds for your closing remarks.
Yeah, so some of the things that I kind of mentioned in my opening remarks that really want to accomplish, and just kind of want to touch back on being from the perspective of the student who's been representing students for the past year. When we look at Brookings, the conversation that happens a lot is what can we do to keep students here in town? And I think this always goes back to kind of the topics we've already discussed. It's housing, it's workforce opportunities, workforce development, and then also just making Brookings really feel like a place that you can call home long term. So working through making sure students know that they have a place to live when they come here, that there's going to be job opportunities when they come here, and that they're going to be able to really get engaged in our community as a member of the community and not just kind of as that like outsider feel. One of the ways I want to work on the career development side of things is creating a partnership to get SDSU students more engaged in the workforce while they're here on campus, and work it as a retention issue and not just here, come work here for the 2 years while you're here on campus. Because I know that's a complaint from a lot of the major employers here in town, is that they train college students to work and then they leave to go to another town somewhere else. And so finding ways that we can get them to stay here so that they get trained during college and they can go directly into that workforce, whether that be for Daktronics or Larson's or any of those major manufacturing groups or any of the other really great companies we have here in town, I think is best. There was a workforce study that happened in 2019, and 90% of companies in Brookings see SDSU as the mainstream for their workforce in town. So I think capitalizing on that opportunity is going to have the greatest impact here in Brookings.
Thank you. And Brianna, close it out for us.
Thank you. Thank you again to the chamber and all of our sponsors and for everyone showing up. And we're not done yet. But City Council is about serving the people of this town. It's about being proactive, informed, and prepared, and being visible in the community and having leaders with a proven track record of serving this community. This one-year position isn't a trial year, but it's actually a really critical year that has an annual review. With the workforce study that's happening, the housing study, and the economic development study, those are going to have long-term impacts with our community. And this position is going to be really critical in bringing a young professional voice, not just students, but everyone in the community, young professionals, young families, and et cetera. And so with this year and next, I hope that you give me your vote on April 12th because I understand what it takes to create a vibrant community, what it takes to have a fiscal budget and be lean and operate long-term and make sustainable decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do a quick reset to get all of the candidates up here for our kind of closing questions to all 7 at one time.
And we're 10 minutes ahead of time. This is awesome. We'll take about 5 minutes, 5-minute break here. Bonnie, can you hear us? Do you guys need water or anything? We're going to take
Please enter
about
your
3 more
participant
minutes
or
till we get
moderator
going, so you have to
code
go to the
followed
bathroom
by
or
the
whatever.
pound key. Please say your name followed by the pound key. You are the first participant in the conference.
Bonnie Specker.
Has joined.
Bonnie, can you hear us?
Yep.
Perfect. We'll get started here in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get going with the fourth and final session. Each of these questions are from the public, and candidates will be given 1 minute to answer. Clock will be up here. And go for it, Angie.
The faster we answer questions, the more questions we can answer. So I'll remind you of that as well. So we'll start and kind of work our way down the line and rotate who goes first every time so that we don't end up with and what she said and what he said by the time we get to the end every time. So we're going to start with Bonnie. Bonnie, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So first question, 3 big issues facing Brookings and many communities in South Dakota are workforce development, workforce housing, and affordability of childcare. Which of these do you think should be the highest priority for the City Council, and what solutions would you support to addressing that problem?
I think childcare is a major factor and that needs to be solved in order to solve the workforce issue. I know several people who have concerns about moving to Brookings because of lack of childcare or affordable childcare or childcare facilities. So I think Brookings should take that as a major initiative, and they need to work with the companies to help solve that problem. Perhaps set up a task force. Brookings, that's all.
Thank you. Leah.
I think all are important, but the top priority for me would be workforce, because I believe that if we have a solid economic base with well-paying jobs that afford head of household kind of positions, we will allow these other issues to kind of take care of themselves to some degree. And so I do think that the workforce aspect is the most important and probably the most likely area that we can actually affect change as the City Council. And that really is just in partnership with economic development and understanding the types of roles that are here, the types of businesses that we'd like to recruit, and making sure that everyone understands how critical workforce is. One thing that I've done personally, a few years ago, I started a Facebook group called Brookings SD Job Search and Recruit, and it's designed to be a clearinghouse for all employment conversations in this community. So employers can share jobs into that group. And if you're looking for a job or you're a 14-year-old and you want to know which places in town will hire you, you can pose those questions into the group and kind of crowdsource some of those things. And that's been really interesting to see the types of needs that are here. Thanks.
Thank you. Holly.
Quite honestly, I don't think you can have one without the other. I think all 3 are equally important. And as someone who is in a human resources profession, it's something that I hear. All 3 of those things are things that I hear about on a very regular basis. And so I think that you really can't have one without the other. You can't build your workforce and bring more people to the community if they don't have a place to live. If they're a family, you can't hire them into a position if they don't have childcare. And then you can't solve the workforce development issue if you don't have those other things. So I truly think that it's something we're going to have to look at in a holistic lens and really answer all of them. I think ways that we can do that is by partnering with our economic development industry and services. A lot of communities use those arms in order to kind of help address some of these issues. And I think also just working creatively with some of the businesses and employers in the community and help understand what they are needing so that we can know what we can support and where we can help maybe build connections.
Thank you. Wayne.
Well, I think the area that I probably know the most about would be the workforce housing. And that's the good part about having the different members on the council. They all have strengths and expertise in different areas. So if I was going to focus on one thing, it would be that. And we really have done a lot with that. I mean, our people that are building homes are doing new things to be innovative, building homes that can be built on a smaller size lot. They're looking at more of the multifamily type things, just a little different design of neighborhoods, going back to the more traditional with the alley in the backyard and stuff. There's some new developments in the works right now that will be very exciting, I think, in the next year or two, that just the whole concept of what a home is changing, and people have adapted to that. And I think that's one of the focuses that I will have going forward.
Thank you. Jeremiah.
So for the most part, I agree with what Leah said. I think the workforce is the primary spot to look at. But I would like to go to some of these larger employers in town and see if we can find a way to work with them to get employer-provided childcare. There's a lot of tax benefits out there for these companies, and I think that's the right way to go when you start looking at what these larger businesses are doing. It's a big hiring incentive for families, and that's the route I'd like.
Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Workforce, in my mind, is probably that top of the line issue for the city council to take on. But I haven't heard anything that I disagreed with yet so far. So I want to talk just a little bit about childcare, because that'd probably be my number two for importance issues. So I work at Gap here in Brookings, so I'm spending 3 to 4 days a week with all the kiddos at Camelot. And I mean, we have a wait list. Like, we can see that it's a big need for parents. I mean, quite often they're coming right at the 6 o'clock hour when we close to pick up their kid, and you can see that like it's just one other thing that they had to do that day. So I think childcare and investing in more options for that is going to be really crucial. I know there was a survey, I believe last year, 2 years ago, that said cost and location are the two most important factors for a parent deciding their childcare location here in Brookings. And so the more cheaper options and the more options just overall in terms of location would really help out that.
Thank you. Brianna.
So as I talk to community members, whether as a person or in my professional life, the first thing that they say when I say, what do you want in Brookings, is I want a safe place that I can afford to live. And then it's, I want a good job and I want to have fun in town. So to me, that says that workforce housing is a huge priority, but they all work together, because if you have children and you don't have childcare, then you can't hold a job. And if you don't have a house, then it's tougher to hold that job as well, because when you have a home in the community, studies show that you have better health, you have better education rates, and you have better access and transportation opportunities to a job. Now, marking a priority on council is tough because you have to understand how they work together. So that's where we can utilize our partners. One of them is the BEDC, and they currently have a child care task force. We also have our nonprofit partners, the Chamber with Workforce, and the BEDC with Workforce as well. And so we can set that priority, but we can have a seat at the table to make those actionable plans with homeownership and workforce.
Thank you. Just a reminder to all the candidates, make sure that the microphone is nice and close to your face so the folks watching at home can hear you. Thank you. Next question. We'll start with Leah. Does the city need a recreation center and or indoor aquatic center? Discuss.
Well, some would say yes and some would say no, right? This is something that we've tracked for a while in the community, and I remember the vote a few years ago when this was put up to a public vote, and the community soundly rejected the idea at that time because it was going to be funded on a raise of property taxes. So maybe there was a want, but then when it came to funding it, that did not pass. Now, fast forward a few years, and we still have folks that will say that we do need those indoor amenities. We've also had other developments that have occurred in the meantime, though. I'm thinking about the soccer facility on South Main that is now active to help those individuals. We have the newly remodeled wellness center on SDSU, and we have a number of gyms, private gyms that are businesses in this town that would be competing with something that the city would fund and do. So I actually think that we're probably pretty well established with possibly the exception of a pool, and maybe that would be something to continue to think about for that lifelong wellness activity.
Time. Holly.
When I talk with individuals about this particular topic, I think what I tend to hear is that folks do want a rec center. What we don't necessarily all agree on is how we fund it. We obviously live in a cold climate, and so having an indoor facility where we can go during the winter months and be physically active, I think is something that's important, and it ties to a lot of other health issues, including mental health issues. But I think the question is, how does that get funded? And so I think continuing to have conversations with individuals in the private sector that maybe could be sponsors or partners on an issue like this, or looking for grant opportunities and other funding opportunities, I think are critical if we are to move forward in this. And I think whether or not the project would happen would really depend on how we would be able to fund it in the future.
Thank you. Wayne.
Well, this is a subject that gets talked about a lot. And there's a certain list of things that excuse me, people want to have. And when you look around the community, most everything on that wish list exists somewhere. And my thought is that rather than building a new structure with a whole base of overhead and needing staff and needing a program to go with, what we really could do is maybe do a whole inventory of what the assets that we already have and make them more accessible. And we do have some of our facilities are on the university campus, some are in different places. They're not all in one place necessarily, but they're all there. If we could have some kind of maybe a system like a pass system where you can access multiple things, so see if you like it. But there's a lot of different things. We have the resources, and we just need to maybe better utilize it.
Time. Thank you. Jeremiah.
So I would agree that we do probably have most of the resources here in town. We did put it to a vote, and it was pretty one-sided which way people thought about financing it. What I look back to is when a few years back when Great Life was actually looking to come to town, and they wanted to get a hold of our golf course, and they were actually talking to us at the bowling alley about something, and everything hinged on that golf course, and we shut that down. I would look to the private sector to solve the problem. If the people don't want to pay for it out of their taxes, which is fine, let's approach companies like that that are willing to come in and take care of the issue for us. Yes, we are going to have to pay to use the facilities, whereas a government one, we might be able to be cheaper, but one way or another, it's got to get paid for, and why not have the people who want to use it pay for it in the private sector?
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, again, not too much I disagree with overall so far. With the facility, I do really resonate with the point that's been made of we do have a lot of these options already established here in town. So whether that be on campus or another city building or a private option that someone has established here in town, there are a lot of recreational activities. I mean, my sister plays hockey, so we're at the ice rink quite a bit, and I love the SJC Wellness Center. So like people are using a lot of those facilities, and I think promoting them more can definitely help with that. But I think as far as completely publicly financing a building such as that might not be in the best interest of the city overall, but I would definitely support, the private-public partnerships to do something like that, just so we do have more opportunities here in town for people to get involved in the community.
Thank you. Brianna.
Thank you. So with this question, I think of three things. I think of funding, accessibility, and maintaining that building. Because when we talk about building a new facility, we also need to talk about maintaining that budget, maintaining the activities, and keeping it accessible to our families, and also just maintaining the infrastructure of it. Funding is huge, and it's already been touched on, and I agree there are partnerships out there, and it's just making those smart investments in our community. But recreational and entertainment opportunities are absolutely a priority of this town because you want to have fun on the weekends. We have a lot of snow and weather. We want to stay in town and have fun there. So it's taking advantage of our current opportunities that we have, maybe increasing the activities we have, looking in the future at a building like that. But right now we have a lot of other capital projects that need our focus, but that doesn't mean that we're taking it off the table. It's just exploring those other partnerships and how we can fund that in an accurate timeline.
Thank you. Bonnie.
I think the issue of the recreational centers outside of the aquatics is pretty well covered with the private companies, but I do think that access to an indoor pool would be ideal. I think there are federal funds and foundation funding grants for rural wellness sites that we might be able to look into that could get some of the funds to build such a complex. But I agree with Brianna that a lot of the issue is going to be maintaining it. I know that maintenance of indoor pools will be expensive, so that is something to consider, even if we can get outside funding to build it. That's all.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Brookings has received national recognition for its diversity and inclusion policies. What would you support the city doing to continue and enhance diversity and inclusion in Brookings? And we'll start this one with Holly.
I think this is a great question, and I think it's something that the city is really committed to doing. What we have done up to this point is we have reached a 100 score on the MEI index, so I think doing things that will allow us to continue to have that score and maintain that 100 is going to be critical as we move forward. We don't want to rest on our laurels when it comes to that. We've also really invested in some partnerships. So between the city, the police department, and groups like CLEAR, which really address some of those diversity issues, and making sure that we continue to support those partnerships and making sure that everyone is at the table when we're having conversations, making sure that we're accessible to all of the various groups within our community, and that when we are having these conversations, we're having those folks be part of the conversation, I think is going to be critical, because we're only going to be coming to the right answers if everyone has a voice as we kind of make those decisions and decide how we can continue to make diversity, equity, and inclusion part of what we do.
Thank you. Wayne.
Well, that is an issue that has been very important in Brookings, and we're leaders in that. And I hope that we continue to do that. I know the City Council has been very supportive of any of the issues that we've had there, and I know that we'll continue to do that. I just my own belief is that it's wrong to exclude anyone from the opportunities that we have, and to enjoy the life that we have to offer in Brookings, and I'll continue to work with the council to support all those issues that will benefit all of our citizens.
Thank you. Jeremiah.
I'll keep it short and simple. I think Brookings is an amazing city, always has been, and before diversity and inclusion was an issue, we were already one of the most accepting communities you could be in. I was born and raised here. Everyone always says how friendly we are. And I think that just goes back to our small town values that we have. And to be honest, we'll just keep moving forward and hopefully keep growing our city and keeping those small town core values.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, so I think with that 100% score, I believe we're the only town in the state of South Dakota that's received that recognition for being, so accepting and so welcoming of the very diverse communities that we have here in town. There's lots of different events that we have put on, both by campus partners and then community partners here in Brookings, that allow you to really step out of your comfort zone when it comes to these types of issues. So pretty much every night of the week, whether it be an on-campus event or somewhere else in the Brookings community, there's somewhere where you can go and outreach into something that you haven't really experienced before. So I know that's something that I've always taken advantage of at my time at SDSU, and I think just as a community, we can really continue to engage with those different communities and then promote different areas where we can improve.
Thank you. Brianna.
Diversity and inclusion is a strong core value of this town. And with a lot of other things, it's not just talking about how much we love it, but it's having that action behind it and those policy changes. So the 100 MEI score was just an example of what we can do. And that came with the Human Rights Commission, which is under the city. So there's a lot of committees under the city. Another one is the Disability Awareness Committee. Those are direct resources that the City Council can lean on to see what the community wants in town for diversity and inclusion and how we can have those actionable items. It's also a workforce issue, because when people feel at home here and they feel included, they're more willing to invest here and stay here long term. And another thing that city councilors can do is listening to the community actively. So it's not just being responsive, but it's being proactive, attending listening sessions at the library, which I have done, and other listening sessions within the community and at SDSU, and being involved with the Multicultural Center in the community and at SDSU. Those are direct resources that we can utilize.
Thank you. Bonnie.
Unfortunately, being at the end of this is causing problems, because I had thought of the whole educational program that the library has been doing, and I think that those are critical. I do think that diversity and inclusion is an issue. We all know of instances where things have happened that shouldn't have happened, and I think it's critical that the city continue to educate the population on the importance of inclusivity and diversity within the city and the advantages of it, as all the other candidates have mentioned.
Thank you. Leah.
I think diversity and inclusion is important. Certainly diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, diversity in a whole lot of different respects. And I would also say that a score of 100, a perfect score on the MEI index, actually shows that we are doing quite well in this area. And from my perspective, that means it's probably not something that should be our very, very top concern and priority as the council. When we talk about things like inclusion, and oftentimes that refers to how people feel about something. And I think it's challenging to ask a local government to try to affect people's emotional states. And so I think that we should always remove barriers. We should have equality of opportunity in all aspects of our life and our community. And that's not going to always lead to equity of outcome. And so I want to make that point. So I think that we're already doing quite well in this area. I would support the initiatives that are already in place and the boards and commissions that are there to champion those causes. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question. What can the city do to increase access to new commercial businesses on Main Street south of 20th Street? For example, a conventional grocery store, especially with the opening of the 20th Street interchange in the next year. We're going to start this one with Wayne.
Well, the city's role in that is probably going to be one of trying to have their their zoning rules and that would accommodate that, and if there's things that we can do that way, the marketplace will kind of decide where a grocery store should be and if there should be one there. If there's a real market for one, it's probably kind of limited to what the actual city government can do to make that happen. But I guess what the best thing that the city can do is to be encouraging and to do the things that just foster an overall strong business climate, and I really believe that we're doing that. When you look at one of the problems that we always discuss is the workforce housing, affordable housing, and that's actually a symptom of everybody that wants to move here and to live here and to go to school here. So it's some of those things are that we think are problems probably are just symptoms of a strong economy.
Just a reminder for everybody, get really close to your microphone for those at home, please.
Thank you, Wayne. Jeremiah.
Well, I unfortunately find myself in the position of strongly agreeing with you. The city can zone it for it. We can try and encourage it, but realistically, the market's going to decide what goes there. The market's going to decide what wants to go there. Do I think we need one? Probably, the way the city's growing to the south. But at the end of the day, honestly, we just have to let the market decide what's going to go and where. So, yeah.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, zoning and infrastructure are probably the two biggest things that the city has a role in terms of what type of development happens on the south side of Brookings. I'd be supportive of anything that we can do to get more businesses over there, whether that be a grocery store or anything else that we can do. Grew up on that side of town, and I know it's only a 5-minute drive, but a little bit of extra time to get to 6th Street sometimes isn't always that fun. So I think personally, love to see some more stuff over there and would support anything the city can do to make that happen.
Thank you. Brianna.
So with encouraging private business, the city does have a pretty distinct role, and that's to remove barriers. It's to encourage as much as we can, but then it's up to private business, and we have to let them run the way that they want. We don't want that government overreach. But we do have partners with the city as well, with the BEDC and the chamber. They're the experts in this, and that's who we can lean on. We've had roles with the downtown business of creating a downtown master plan, and so that could be an opportunity in the future if that's what's needed. With the grocery store specifically, I'll say that there's one that's being developed right now, the Dakota Community Market, and I'm not saying that's the solution, but I'm saying that that's one of the options that's already being developed. So when you look at the interstate exchange, that's absolutely going to need to be strategically planned because we're running out of land. That's our biggest opportunity. And so we can just encourage zoning of what is pitched to us. We can be proactive in listening to the community of what they need, and that's how we move forward.
Thank you. Bonnie.
To me, there's two issues here. One of them is the availability of grocery stores for the entire population of Brookings. Granted, we do have 2 grocery stores, but they are located in the north eastern section of the city. So I think it would be nice to have something in the south. And there's a lot of houses there. People would find it easier to get to. But the other issue that we need to think about is the master plan and how that fits into the master plan and the development of that part of Brookings. And that's what I would do is look more into that.
Thank you. Leah.
If I had $1 for every time someone said to me, Watertown has an Aldi, why don't we? I'd have at least a few bucks. So I know that this is a concern and something that people want to see. Of course, I'm going to say that the market is going to determine how and where and when and why exactly that might occur. But I think the biggest thing that we could do for these types of questions as a city council would be the thing that we've already done, which is moving forward with the interchange project and getting that going. That is the big kind of, the big rock, the big visionary project that, when decided, will allow others to dream different dreams about what types of businesses might go where. And so it's those types of big decisions that the city council has to be creative about and has to be willing to continue to make into the future. Going into land use, we have to be sensible about our utilities and lift stations and all of that. And so those are the big projects that we have to decide so that in the future, these types of amenities can come alongside. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly.
I would agree that one of the biggest hurdles for this particular issue was getting the interchange started. That's something that the council's already done. That project is in the works, and I think that just by nature, that very simply is going to allow for some of these business opportunities to occur. There'll just be better access to that part of town. Also, I would agree that zoning is going to be something that lands on our plate and our responsibility, and making sure that some of these businesses can go and be in that space. The other thing that I think the city can do is work with developers to help them better understand what we are hearing from the community in terms of need, and helping to bridge that gap. The city may not be the one actually starting these businesses or encouraging specific businesses to be housed there, but we can say to developers that are coming to us, we can say, this is what we're hearing. And I think if we can be that bridge builder, that gap filler, I think that that serves a really great role and a necessary role in that process.
Thank you. We're going to do our last question, and we'll start with Jeremiah. Does the city need a liquor store when they get a percentage on all liquor sold? What would you propose as the best alternative? Does the city need a liquor store when they get a percentage on all liquor sold? What would you propose as the best alternative?
So this is a question that is kind of near and dear to my heart. I do believe the city should not be in business to be in business. Is this something that I want to go after? Oh, sorry. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I do not believe the city should be in business to be in business. It's not one of my primary things, but if it does come up, I would love to see the city get out of the liquor store business and send it to the private market. We're already getting a cut off of it, and my argument would be that if we had 2 or 3 people pick up the mantle of running a liquor store, that the tax revenue would actually increase. Just as a point of reference, you know, our liquor store closed at 9 o'clock last night on a Friday night in a college town. Tell me we couldn't have made a little bit more money there. Yeah, really, I would love to see us get out of it, send it to the private market, and keep the tax on the liquor.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Jeremiah said. I know that this is a long-standing issue here in Brookings and one that has a lot of opinions on it. But I think just looking kind of from the outside on that, I mean, it's a lot easier to allow private businesses to run in Brookings and not have to compete with their own government. That's kind of where I stand as a general rule of thumb on things. And so I guess the short answer is probably take Brookings out of the liquor store. But I guess I don't know exactly all the arguments behind it, but I would definitely be open to all the different opinions that I know that are out there.
Thank you. Brianna.
Thank you. So yes, this is definitely a hot topic issue. When we look at running the city from a budget perspective, we have to look at our revenue. The liquor store is a major revenue source for the city, and that's who funds infrastructure, nonprofit programs, our parks and rec system, a lot of the other departments in the city. So if we ever make a decision to move away from a financial source, we have to have another safety net underneath. We can't just remove that source and then be lost. With the liquor store conversation, you know, I think we can look at the economic spending study if that's the way that we want to move and again, find that safety net. But for me to support that, I would need a lot of community input. I would need to look at that study and those recommendations and have peer reviews as well, because we have to support our city as it is right now. But I'm always willing to listen to other opinions and see how we can move forward in a conversation.
Thank you. Bonnie.
It's my understanding that the city of Brookings voted on this issue a couple years ago and had voted to have this liquor store be maintained under the control of the city. It does provide the city with significant income to support our quality of life, and I would listen to other options, but I haven't heard any other option that I particularly like other than keeping it as part of the city.
Thank you. Leah.
I believe that the liquor store transfer to the general fund last year was about $468,000. For a city budget of $53 million annually, $468,000 is not insurmountable, and it is something that we could shed and figure out a different way. I think that the original reasons that the city-owned liquor began here in Brookings, I think back in 1921, may no longer apply to the city that we have today, the economy, the demographics, and the folks that are here. To the point earlier made, closing at 9 o'clock on a busy potential night, that might be a sign that, you know, revenue could be expanded from that operation if the private sector were allowed to come in. Perhaps there would be more than one liquor store available in the community, and I think that we could offset the loss of that transfer with just the increase in sales tax generated off the sales.
Thank you. Holly.
So I think it's no surprise to anyone that this is a topic where a lot of people feel divided. There is a lot of folks that think the city should absolutely be out of this, and others who understand that part of the reason the city remains in it is because of a revenue issue. I would largely agree with some of the comments that Bree made, that if we are to remove ourselves from the liquor store business, then we really do need to be mindful about how we replace that revenue. I'm certainly open to the idea of exploring having the city no longer own the liquor store. It's not something I would be opposed to, as long as we can make sure that we continue to maintain a good quality of life and maintain the other programs that we have in place by replacing the funding that we would lose. I don't know how that would how we would do that at this point. I hear a lot of ideas, and again, I'd be very happy to listen to those ideas. But at this point, we haven't seen how we would be able to replace that revenue. So I think that would be the biggest roadblock we would have to overcome in order to shift away from a city-owned liquor store.
Thank you. Wayne.
Well, this is an issue that we've heard about forever. I think everybody's discussed it. Should we be in the liquor store business or not? And it does produce revenue that we would have to replace somehow. There is some thought that do we want to, other communities that have liquor stores on every different corner in this city. It does change the look of a community when you have the big neon signs on the main street or the main thoroughfares. But that's another question. I think you would just have to discuss that, study it, see what the actual projections are for the income, what you would do as an alternative. How would you allocate? Would you sell that license, or would you lease it out? Or there's a lot of different issues that will come from that. So it's just something that we'll probably continue to talk about it.
Thank you all. That concludes our forum for the morning. I want to make sure that I express our thanks to the candidates for being a part of the discussion today, to our audience for the questions that you supplied. Certainly we couldn't get to all of them. So if you've still got outstanding questions for our candidates, feel free to chat with them afterwards. Thank you to the Public Affairs Committee, and specifically BEDC for being the Public Affairs Committee sponsor this season. And certainly thank you to Kurt from Cool Beans for providing our coffee this morning. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bonnie Specker
has left.